Good morning, everybody. My name is Jan Brzeski from Sage Credit. We're a lender, and I want to thank you so much for doing this and coming on Zoom, which after COVID, I think we all have lots of Zoom, so we really appreciate your making this hour to learn about infill development and SB9 and all those related things. I wanted to give out my own cell number to everybody in case you want to just text me a question. You'll also be able to ask questions using the question button. But my number is 310-428-9109, 310-428-9109, and I welcome questions throughout the whole session. So our topic today is, with this incredible panel that we have, is SB9 development, meaning all forms of kind of infill development, especially in residential zones that were typically single-family residential in the past. And I'm really excited about this, and my hope is that there's going to be a lot of developers that create wealth by doing projects in their own community, and that we have some developers on this call that I'm going to start with that have successful businesses already doing this, and my hope is that we get a lot more people emulating that in their location. But there's a debate, and Jennifer Hernandez, one of our speakers that works on bigger projects, is going to talk about, maybe help us balance out and see the bigger picture about how much of our housing problem can really be solved by this. But I want to encourage that debate. So we're going to have a poll question, and you might have a poll question right now, which has to do with what your own role is. What's your experience with an SB9 project? So you're either currently working on one, you're planning to start one, or you're not planning to start one. And this will give us a little bit of insight into who's on the panel. And I'll let y'all know how the group in the audience answers this, so that we know what our audience is. While that's happening, I'm going to start to introduce our panel. So first, Mohammed, I'd love for you to give a 30-second to 1-minute background on yourself and your company, please. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Mohammed Alameldin. I am the Senior Policy Advisor at California MB. I plan legislation and track implementation of state housing laws that we primarily passed. If you're not familiar with the laws that we have passed in California, we have done this by ourselves or with a coalition of partners. Things like accessory dwelling units, SB9, SB 1123 or SB 684, and most recently the CEQA infill exemption and SB 79, and a whole slew of other bills. If you're interested in learning more about California YIMBY and our efforts, just message the chat and we could send over more information. Thank you.
And I'm just going to say thank you for a minute, because California YIMBY has moved the needle, in my view, on enabling more redevelopment of urban infill residential lots. And that's a big deal, because housing is our number one problem. Affordability of housing, I think, is our number one problem in the state. Next up, Jared, could you give 30 seconds or a minute on your background and your company?
Yeah, so I'm a part of a company called Middle Housing Partners, and we focus on all the laws that Mohammed has helped lovingly pass for us. So we're build-to-rent developers. We do the infill using SB9, ADU, and SB 1123. So all of these ministerially approved laws. We run a private equity fund that funds a lot of that. And yeah, we're just excited to see all these new things keep coming out.
Wonderful. And Sal, can you talk about yours? And you're based in the Inland Empire.
Yes, in Riverside.
Inland Empire, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Wonderful. And Sal.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sal Tabrizi. I'm an engineer. I'm a civil engineer with focus in structures, structural engineering. I'm a contractor and a builder. I'm the co-founder of Rise Capital. We have a boutique development company down here in San Fernando Valley, located in Encino, and we mostly utilize SB9, all the new SBs and ABs that are coming out for ADUs, and also multiple dwellings that you can build on a single family zoning.
And both Sal, you, and Jared have done a number of projects already completed and have many in the pipeline. So I just want to point out for those of you listening, there are at least the two of them on this call who have built substantial, meaningful businesses taking advantage of this as developers and investors. Next up, I'd like to go to Jennifer Hernandez.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Hernandez. I am a partner at the law firm of Holland and Knight. I've been doing land use work in California for 40 years. And as was discussed, my group tends to work on somewhat larger projects. About 70% are infill location projects, but typically more than 100 units, often a traditional apartment type project, as well as new city or greenfield scale projects where you get into the thousands of units. And been working with and alongside the IMBs and other pro-housing advocacy groups. We've litigated and successfully defended many of the new housing laws, which now have teeth and which now are actually getting substantial changes. Beverly Hills most recently has come around with 3 approvals in one day of 3 apartment projects, an inconceivable outcome.
Incredible. That is,
Incredible.
as a 30-year Los Angeles resident, it is shocking to read the news about all those builders remedy projects getting approved.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay,
Thanks.
terrific. I'd like to go now to Gloria. And Gloria, your business is different, but still taking advantage of these laws, but in a different way. Can you go ahead and give about a minute background on yourself?
Of course. Hi, everybody. I'm Gloria Riechers. I'm the co-founder at Riechers Engineering, and we are a civil engineering company specialized in SB9 lot splits. So that's all that we do. We found the SB9 lot split process is highly complex and technical, especially for homeowners. So that's where we come in and we offer a white glove service for homeowners. So we take a lot split project from A to Z. We do all the engineering, surveying, project management in order to create new buildable properties for homeowners. And we have over 200 projects throughout the entire state of California, about 80 of which have already been approved.
Wonderful. And the homeowner, you had mentioned, this is getting into detail, but I want to make sure we talk about the possibility that someone has to sign an affidavit that they intend to live at the property for 3 years in order to split the lot currently. And I wanted to come back to, does that have to be the existing homeowner, or could that be a tenant or a future home buyer on the property? So let's make sure that we circle back to that. But Brian is our 6th panelist. And Brian, you're from Northern California, and your business is both, I believe, well, why don't you go ahead and give us your background and tell us about your business?
Yeah, thank you, Jan. I just want to take 5 seconds to mention that owner affidavit is only applicable to the split of the SB9, which is often a common misconception that that's applied to the entire law itself. But my name is Brian Tesch. I'm a co-founder at LTM Development Services. We are development services providers for investors and general contractors for most kind of by right single-family infill strategies and laws, such as SB9, 684, 1123, and ADUs, of course. We've been operating for just over probably 2 years now, but combined as a team, we've built over 600 residential units in California.
Thank you so much for pointing out, Brian, what you said, which is that there is a business model now that has nothing to do with splitting the lot. And on that note, I want to kick off our panel with a question for both Sal and Jared. And looks like our poll numbers are back. So let me see if I can get the poll numbers. How do I get the poll? Okay, here we go. So we have 18% are working on an SB9 project, 45% are, it looks like 45% are planning one in the next 2 to 3 years, and then 37% not planning one. I don't think those numbers quite add up to 100, but maybe they do. I guess they do. Okay, perfect. So thank you for the poll. So here's what my understanding, Sal, what you and Jared are both doing is you're building 3 or 4 units on a lot, you're renting them out, and then you're typically holding them as part of a portfolio of rental housing, kind of like developing your own fourplexes and having a portfolio of fourplexes, but you're doing it in zones that weren't typically allowing fourplexes, and now they do. Is that, and you're refinancing the construction loan into a permanent loan, and you're cash flowing your property at least a little bit right from the get-go. And as your cash flow increases, as your rents increase, it's going to become a very valuable asset with more and more cash flow over time. That's the premise of the business. Is that kind of accurate? And can you each comment on how is that right, and how's it going?
I think that's a fair assessment. It is not just holding on to them. You can, if you get it right, get into a right deal and plan it right and build it right. You can even flip it, and the ROI on that is, I'm sure it beats the multifamily. It's not an apples to apples comparison, but your cash on cash return and ROI is definitely higher, and most of that comes from the fact that you can get these permits much quicker. And if you know what you're doing in the permitting phase, your annual ROI is definitely higher than multifamily. And if you wanted to keep him, you can. The fact that you basically have 2 single family and 2 ADUs on one lot allows you to get a conventional loan with like 10%, 5%, or 20% down. So they're really easy to sell to your average mom and pop buyer, and you don't have to put down 45% or 50% down. And selling them, and also if you wanted to refinance, you can always get a DSCR loan, which is a debt service coverage loan. And since you're refinancing, you're not paying any closing costs, and that becomes a part of your equity. And they're really easy to refinance from get-go. The way that it works for me is if I wanted to take out everything that I put into the property still cash flows positive, depending on the deal, but they still cash flow positive at the end of the day.
And one of the things that struck me when I was touring one of your properties, Sal, is how one of the ADUs that you built, or one of the backyard units you built, was a 2,000 square foot home that you could. I'm in my home that we raised our kids in, and our home was an 1,800 square foot home here in Westwood. It's now about 2,000 square feet after a little addition, but it's an entirely feasible way to raise a family, live on a mature tree-lined street. And yes, you're sharing the lot with a few other people, but I think it's truly attainable and attractive housing that's close to jobs, and that's why I'm excited about this. Jared, can you comment on this as well? And also, can you comment on how many projects are you working on? I want people to understand that this is not just a really tiny little business.
Yeah. So the same kind of thought process as Sal. Like we're using those same laws, and we're trying to BRRRR every time. Usually we get all of our cash back. And so BRRRR meaning build, renovate, or like buy, renovate, refinance, rinse, repeat, and from that perspective, we've built our business. And so over the last 4.5, 5 years, we've done over 600 doors somehow of this kind of product, whether it's ADU, junior ADU, and now in the last year, a lot of SB9. And between the different laws that we've kind of discussed here, we have 500 and some odd units in process, from escrow to being in the middle of the construction. So that's kind of
one of the other things that got me really focused on this, and this is our focus in California, because we believe this is what pencils best. And both you, Sal, and Jared, I believe you're building to a cap rate where apartment developers could never even come close to touching that. I believe that you're able to generate more income for every dollar that you invest than they can do if they build a traditional apartment. And I don't even think it's close. I don't even think it's, this margin. I think it's more like quite a bit better cash flow. Now, you do have to deal with a lot of different fourplexes, and you have to be set up to manage those. And I think that's probably the biggest obstacle for our audience to implementing this on large scale, is you have to really be willing to commit. I'm going to be a property manager, and I'm going to have, dozens of units, and they're not all going to be together.
Yeah, but it also comes with its advantages. They're very easy to move if you decided to liquidate any of them or get into another investment. It's much easier to sell a fourplex compared to a 100 unit. That you can sell that in like one of the houses that I put on the market last week. It's sold in the first open house, and it's more than my expectations. And I wanted to add. Mohammed is the expert in this, but I think they just came up. Gavin Newsom signed the Assembly Bill 1154, which removes the requirement for owner occupancy for the junior ADU. That was one of the biggest hurdles that you had to compare, like a fourplex on a R1 or like a particular, solely single family zoning. Compared to like an RD 1.5 in Los Angeles, which is you can actually build 4 houses.
Okay, this is complicated. I think I know what you said, but Mohammed, can you address that and say what that means in lay terms so that our audience can follow what we're talking about?
So junior ADU is either a converted space within a home or a garage. Really, it just has to be attached to the main structure. It's limited to about 500 square feet. What we did is that we made the rules between a junior ADU and a detached ADU pretty much the same in the state of California. And the benefits here is that the 203K renovation loan program impacts junior ADUs. You can actually finance that. It's a lot easier to finance an addition or a conversion than a detachment. So we made pretty much all the rules similar. There was just some issues with parking sometimes. But other than that, yeah, it's like these units could have their own kitchen, they could have their own bathroom. It's really just, and it's solidified statute that HCD put out, basically that in California, any single family home could have one converted space turned into a junior ADU, an addition of a home or a garage conversion into an ADU. So you have the single family home, you have one, so you have 3 right there, and you have a detached ADU in the back. So now any single family home could be a fourplex.
All right, we have our first question. I wanted to encourage questions as we go. So here, let me read it. Why would some lender say that the SB9 unit is not the same as the ADU? They don't give, this is a little hard to understand. They can't give more value on the second unit. They sometimes only appraise the ADU as a pool, which gives us about 45,000. Question is, how do I get my money back out? So they're having trouble with the appraisal. Can either you or Jared or Brian address, have you ever had trouble with the appraisal?
Yes, back in early 2020s, when it must be 2020 or 2021, maybe 2019, when an appraiser came out to appraise one of the properties, they didn't even know what an ADU was. So they really undervalued the property, and thank God the buyer had a very big down payment, and he was willing to purchase the property. So it's just a matter of time for the appraisers to get caught up, depending on where you live. All of the appraisers in LA right now, they know we were having a hard time appraising the properties that had the ADU and a junior ADU, basically a 3-unit. And that became very standard. And now the 4 units are becoming very, very standard in this neighborhood.
So, Sal, you touch on a great point, which is the education curve here, which is part of what we're trying to address with this event. It's very difficult. And Mohammed, when you were reeling off all the laws, I can understand why a lot of people just say SB what and what and what and what and junior this, and it's almost overwhelming. So I have a question for Jennifer and Mohammed to discuss, and then Brian and Gloria, we're going to pull you both in shortly here. But is the intent of these laws was to create more housing at more attainable prices and to use the single family zone neighborhoods, which is the majority of our developed land, as a way to have that extra density in those neighborhoods. How's it going overall? And then maybe Mohammed, can you give your 30 seconds? And then Jennifer, I'd like you had some numbers that you used on our prep call that I thought were interesting. I'd like you to give your high level assessment of housing in California for the next years to come. What's likely to happen? Mohammed, how's it going from your perspective?
So ADUs are the big success story. Right. And the benefit of an ADU is that you could house hack a home. You get an FHA loan, a conventional loan. You could use 75% of the income of the ADU towards the mortgage. Like, it allows for more house hacking opportunities that were made illegal by single family zoning. FHA loans don't work when it comes to 2 ADUs or 3 ADUs. It works for a triplex, but it doesn't work for a property with 2 ADUs. I'm not in the federal business, and maybe someone has connections to the federal government to fix it. So, there's more house hacking opportunities. Subdivisions are still new. We're waiting to see how that plays out. From the developments that we've been seeing, we have seen these small subdivisions of 10 infill units be remarkably cheaper than just a single family home placed on the property.
Have you seen some of those built already and standing?
They're in construction, but their quoted prices of which they're going to sell it to will be much less than a single family home in a comparable market.
So just for our audience, that's using SB 1123, I believe. A vacant single family lot can potentially house as many as 10 units, and each can be for sale, and the lot can actually be split into 10 units. Jennifer, did I get that right?
Condoized as well, and
condoized or lot split? Can it be actually a split of the lot, or can it only be condoized?
Both. It could be both, and it happens in multifamily zones as well. So if you have a duplex existing in a multifamily zone, you could lot split or condoize up to 10 units in the back. ADU, and there's density requirements, and it gets a lot more technical, but I'll hand it to Jennifer. The lawyers are much better at this.
Yeah, so the first thing to know is this is very much like sort of a tax practice for a lawyer now, because there's so many commas between each of the eligibility criteria for each of the legal programs. And each one of these that moves through Sacramento is its own food fight. And everybody had to, give and take some more. And so this is anything but user-friendly or simple. And that stickiness has created obstacles for both homeowners and potential investors, and certainly for cities. And so each planning department may or may not have acquainted themselves with any of these, and they are not typically able to keep up with each that comes up every year. And then there's resistance to changing neighborhood character like this, especially since many of these now come with a CEQA exemption. And CEQA used to be kind of a catch-all. Oh, I don't care what the housing law says. We'll just deal with it in CEQA, and everybody goes slow and can litigate and stuff. We've now got a much more robust set of CEQA exemptions. Time deadlines are more meaningfully enforceable and whatnot.
So but
it's super, super complicated.
It is complicated, but I want to give some hope to the people in the audience here, because Mohammed, you have helped people to educate the cities that they're in about the state law. And I'm aware there's such a thing as a technical assistance letter that can help with certain applications, I believe, when the city doesn't understand and is sort of saying, I don't get it. Because again, everything you mentioned that makes this complex, Jennifer, I think that's the reason why we're not seeing more projects in all the cities right now. And only certain cities have really gotten there, because someone like Sal came in and, Sal, you told me the story about how you educated them. But the NIMBYs are using this complexity to try to have one more roadblock to housing in these neighborhoods for the reasons that you said, right? Because the people in that neighborhood don't want this in their neighborhood. But here's my one passionate point that I want to make. If you're a NIMBY that lives in a single family home, you are contributing to the biggest problems of our society in California that could create, devastating effects for our state and the future of our state. So don't be a NIMBY. I mean, I know that we're kind of preaching to the choir on this call, but people that are NIMBYs, it's time to call them out for what they are, which is that they're making it impossible for their own kids to have a life unless they just inherit the house and eventually get to live in their parents' house. And that's not a dynamic society. We want a more dynamic society than that. Mohammed, do you have assistance for developers that are fighting with their city because the city doesn't understand all these complex laws?
So to begin first, SB 1123, we plan to pass a bunch of cleanup to make the laws easier, similar to ADU law. That's in our legislative agenda for next year. We have 20 different things. That's usually just like cutting out the complexities. A lot of these housing bills are just going to need a lot of these housing bills, it's just the implementation has not been enough thus far. It just isn't. And we need to just invest more resources into that field. And that's something I'm trying to tackle within the next month while we plan legislation next year. How do we do implementation better? How do we help cities and developers? We do offer some select services to learn more about developer implementation and ways that we could fix legislation for next year.
Can you point people in the right direction though? If somebody on the
Yeah.
call is sitting in their city and saying, I could do this, I'd like to do this, but I know my city doesn't understand this stuff yet. Could you point them to resources to help figure it out? Or Jared,
Yeah.
have you provided services to other developers like this in the past?
So the issue is that the enforcement mechanisms, there's just so many letters out there and it's really hard to track. I really just recommend talking to a land use attorney. They keep track of, we have specialized fields for a reason, right? Like I'm not going to conduct surgery on myself. I'm not a doctor. Like the same thing kind of with development right now. If you're doing something very complicated, like it's okay to pay someone to figure out what you can do, what's feasible, working with an engineer, working with an architect and working with a lawyer. It's going to take some investment on your part for you to be able to do these
Well,
developments.
and I could see how that could be a big obstacle because if somebody has to go out of pocket $10,000 for legal expense just to educate their city, maybe they're only planning to do one project and now that's enough to kill the project. It's just like, I can't get there. So Jared, I know you're very passionate about this, not just for your own business, but I want to come back to you on other things for smaller developers that want to start doing this, but we haven't heard from Gloria and Brian yet, and apologies for the long wait. Gloria, what are you seeing in terms of trends on your business? Are you getting a lot of calls from people wanting to split their lot, and how's that all going?
Yeah, we've been getting more and more ever since the beginning. I think it's pretty accurate that education has been lacking. So a lot of homeowners still don't even know what SB9 is or if their lot is eligible. So ever since 2022, we have been doing kind of grassroots education / marketing. So we've mailed out tens of thousands of letters directly to homeowners who have eligible SB9 lots saying, hey, did you know what SB9 is? Did you know your property is eligible? And so we're, sending out these letters to educate people. We're seeing that it's slowly picking up and we're starting to get a lot more word of mouth now. So people are starting to hear about SB9, they're Google searching, their neighbors are talking about it, families talking about it. So I would say we've seen a pretty steady increase in an interest in SB9 lot splits.
How many engagements have you had so far for your company since you launched this new service?
We have had about 4,000.
4,000 inquiries?
People that we've directly spoken to, so either calls or emails.
And how many people have engaged your company and signed an agreement with your company to come help them do what they're trying to do? Ballpark.
Yeah, we have about 210 clients that we've either completed or we're in progress with.
That's meaningful. And for example, a retired couple that has an extra space in their backyard, if there was a way for them to split that lot, stay in their house and sell the back to a developer, that could be a really good solution. That could unlock a lot of land for redevelopment. Is that happening? Is that viable? Or what's the biggest obstacle to that right now?
Yeah, absolutely. We talk to a lot of people who have like a bunch of vacant land and they're like, well, we don't want to take care of it. We'd love to have some cash for our retirement. So they want to sell off the back lot, or maybe they want to have an investment property for their children because they know their kids can't afford a property. We also have quite a few clients who want to develop it themselves. And so they want to do the lot split and the SB9 development. They want to enjoy some passive income. I would say the majority of our clients do want to split it off and sell it just to have kind of a chunk of cash coming in.
Right. Just out of curiosity, if somebody is able to split off their backyard into a separate lot and sell it to a developer, Could the developer treat that as eligible for SB 1123 and build more than 2 units? Because, or is that a no-go? Anybody who knows the answer to that, feel free to chime in.
You broke up a little bit for me, John. Do you mind repeating that once more?
Not possible. Okay. Yeah, you answered the question, Jared. So let's keep moving. Brian, you're in Northern California in the Bay Area, and what are you seeing there? Because it seems like there's some differences between implementation in Northern and Southern California, but what are you seeing in your business?
Well, I think taking a step back, one big issue we haven't talked about on this call yet is just individual jurisdictions and municipalities. And that is a huge theme up here in the Bay Area. We have 112 individual jurisdictions that encompass the greater Bay Area. Within those 112 independent jurisdictions, there are, triple digit utility districts, special interest zones, and things like that add a tremendous level of complexity that kind of results in an overall theme of brain damage and pain and suffering that I think there's a lot of conversations on this call about. Like the idea a land use attorney gets involved in an SB 9 or 64 project is in itself crazy to me. We've never had a project that requires that level of escalation. That's not to say that's not the right way to go in some jurisdictions. In fact, that's not even to say that's not the right way to go in a majority of jurisdictions in California. But what I want to really stress today is that there are pro SB 9, there are pro 684, 1123 cities that have taken and have invested more time than others in implementation, in streamlining the process, in creating guides. And
give us a few names in Northern California. Which cities have been friendly towards this so far? Maybe 2 or 3 names.
Yeah, Alameda City approved our 4-unit tentative map in 42 days. That's a shout out. Very clean and easy process. They have a lot of objective standards. They have a lot of design criteria, which some of our clients are not excited about. So they still retain, they're still able to put their fingerprints on the process. But overall, it's a great example of meeting developers in the middle. San Francisco even has, and this is rarely a city I would call out for being efficient and streamlined when it comes to the permitting process. They did take the time to think about what implementation looks like, create guides, and disseminate the objective standards and small lot subdivision standards that would be applicable to 64 versus things that would not be applicable. San Jose has done a great job as well. Los Angeles, San Diego, big cities in Southern California, we've had success with and have tentative maps approved with 684. So I think, one lesson I would like to really shout out to emerging developers and folks in the industry is that, really pick the place where you work. And I even think, some of the folks on this call that have built successful large development businesses are specialized in cities that ultimately, when you boil it down, are pro that law.
And I want to add to that, because my background for the last 15 years has been lending to smaller developers. And I've also seen the most successful ones do focus in on one geographic area or 1 or 2 jurisdictions, and then they just repeat. And I would like nothing more than to see many people that are in our audience become wealthy by building portfolios of rental properties or doing a series of for sale projects or both. We have a lot of questions, so I want to go to a rapid fire question and answer session here to make sure we clear the queue of questions, and then we'll get more questions for the end. So what I'm going to ask for is, if you can answer this question, I want you to keep your self unmuted and shout out and give an answer, and keep it quick so that we can clear through, at least give some feedback on all these 10 questions that I have. I have a pretty large lot in an urban area. Do you have recommendations on who to consult with about the best way a homeowner can develop this land between ADUs, lot splits, and stick builds versus prefab, movable tiny homes? So I don't know where you're located, Poe, but if you if you can text me a question of where you're located, that might help us steer you to somebody local, because I think somebody local in your area will be most helpful. So I'm going to look for another email from Poe on that one. I'm currently in the process of splitting a lot in San Jose, which should be completed by December this year. The new lot will be approximately 4,000 square feet. My question is, can I build a duplex on the new lot, essentially 2 main houses? If so, would it be better to construct a side-by-side duplex or 2 detached structures in terms of ROI? Wow, that's very detailed. Anybody want to take a crack at that? Advantages, disadvantages?
What's the zoning?
You need your zoning, and we'll come back to you. San Bernardino City Planning Department has zero knowledge of these bills and are leaning on me to provide insight and guidance. I've gotten HCD involved. Okay. I know you're in this Inland Empire, Jared. Any thoughts on that? Does your company have services for other developers to help guide them along the way, or not so much?
We do. In general, that's not our focus. We have a mastermind community that we run called Micro Development Mastery with other practitioners that we kind of show them where our missteps were and that kind of stuff. And so we help in that community. But in general, I will say that lots of times, like San Bernardino, we don't love working there because of this specific issue. Like, they are not super awesome to work with from our perspective. And what I will say, though, is a lot of times it's just dependent upon who you walk up and talk to. Like, that's almost in every city. So HCD, that is superpower. Like, work with those guys, and there is a lot of information out there, though.
Can you say the name of the mastermind again, or put it in the chat or something?
It's Micro Development Mastery.
Okay, great. And also, I see that, Mohammed, you've been answering questions from the chat, which I appreciate. I want to keep running through these. We had a question. We have an office in North Carolina as well, and we have a question there in Durham, North Carolina. We cannot run private utilities across private lots. Can you just easement these in California? Does anybody know the answers?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, you can.
So there's something good in California that I like. I love that. Something positive here. Poe is in San Diego. Poe had asked the question of, let me go back to your question, Poe. Your question was, oh, great. Sorry. I'm losing the thread here, folks. I'm sorry. There's so many questions.
John, I think it's in the answered column.
Okay. I answered. Okay. How about open? So I have 14 open and 10 answered.
Our firm can speak with Poe too about what kind of developments he could do on his lot.
Perfect. Poe, can you please reach out to Gloria afterwards? Toby asks, Gloria, in that case, can I do SB9 without lot split since it's faster? And then when I finish the project, I immediately apply for lot split. Will this save me time and be more cost effective? I think I've heard that you can't build the units and then split the lot later. Is that true? Or what do you think on that, Gloria?
You can do an SB9 development and split anytime afterwards, as long as
you can.
As long as the SB9 lot split is viable and around, we can split anytime afterwards.
Fabulous.
Hey, one thing to quickly note on that theme, SB9 splits are eligible in existing duplexes. They do not need to be new units.
Okay, I'm going to keep going. Salas asks, can you tear down a house to make a vacant lot to use SB 1123? What about in Santa Monica? Go ahead.
Yeah, LA. So LA has been a thorn on our backside when it comes to passing legislation, but their implementation is great. And last week they published their implementation of SB 1123, and they are allowing the demolition of a home to build 10 units.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
that's really incredible.
Santa Monica, I would say, well, Santa Monica is pretty pro housing as well. I would say go to their planning department and be like, hey, save you a whole bunch of time, just adopt LA's implementation memo, and that could work pretty well for you.
Since I'm not going to be able to necessarily read all these questions, I might overlook them. I want you to contact me and we'll distribute them to the right person and get you as many resources as we can afterwards. One way to reach me to make sure I get your questions, if you didn't have your questions answered, is to text me. And my number, again, I'm going to give it to you for later, is 310-428-9109. If you just text me, I'll get your question somehow, and then we'll try to distribute it, because questions are pouring in. There's 17 open questions now, which is, I take this as a great sign. Somebody is asking, Bronwyn is asking, how does all this apply in LA's fire rebuild neighborhoods? So my understanding is that Palisades has exempted themselves, or been able to get exempted from SB 9 and most of this densification, but Altadena is leaning into it and is okay with it. Does anybody have knowledge of that on this call? Mohammed, do you, or does anyone else know about that?
Oh, I was answering a question. I was typing up a question for someone. So you're saying Altadena rebuild?
Well, they're asking, how does this work in the fire zones? And what I've learned to date is that Palisades got exempted from densification, but Altadena believes in densification, is not exempting themselves.
Yes, Altadena, and the first rebuild is most likely going to be an SB9 development in Altadena, actually. The woman was able to double the square footage of her house and to build an additional unit on the lot. Okay. I'm sorry, Jared wanted to say something.
Oh, I mean, I have a project in Altadena right now with SB9 and 280Us. Only our shed burnt down, and so we were in escrow when the fires happened. So that was an interesting experience. But yeah, I mean, that's what we have seen. I will give an opinion on that real quick. Like, very pro housing. Obviously, these laws, I think, specifically what the Palisades was trying to do is like this. What we see is quiet density, right? Like you're going to have a few lots within your neighborhood where you're going to add units, but when you have whole tracts that have burnt down and now you're coming and putting 4 units on every lot because you have developers coming in to build, it does completely change the way that neighborhood looks in a non-natural way versus like people implementing over time. It's a different look. And so I
got to keep going, Jared. Thank you. Sorry. There's so many questions. I want to get to as many of them as we can. So Charlie had a question. He asked, how much better are the cap rates for SB9 type developments versus traditional apartment developments or a traditional fourplex? And I believe that for traditional apartment development today, you're looking at developing probably to a 5 or 5.5 cap, or maybe 6. Sal and Jared, are you seeing, and it could be lower. I mean, a lot of apartments aren't getting built because if they did build them, they'd be building to a 4 cap, and that's why there's no apartments being built. But are you exceeding a 6, Sal and Jared? Are you seeing that you're able to do that? Oh, Sal, you're on mute.
Yes, in some cases, we have surpassed even 7%, but that's if you keep the property. But if you sell it, the price adjustment will just offset that and bring that closer to what you're getting in multifamily. But if you kept it, 100%, it's you can get over 6.5%.
But your point is that you could sell it and probably take a profit right away.
For sure, 100%.
And a meaningful profit, because you said you sold one recently and it sold for more than you even expected,
yes.
Right?
Yes, 100%. You can realize the profits. You just have to buy the right lot and just develop it.
So, and this is my hope, is that we see rental housing, instead of building these giant apartment buildings, which don't meet the needs of a family as well, and instead of building subdivisions that are in greenfield sites that are, an hour and a half from jobs, no offense, Jennifer, to your clients, but I don't think that's the healthiest thing for the future of California. We see more urban infill units being added that are rental units and that are close to jobs, but they're freestanding buildings. That's, again, my opinion only.
And super quick, Jan, in higher land cost areas up here in the Bay Area, we underwrote an 11.6% cap rate on a 3-unit SB9 infill in Santa Clara City. So the higher the land cost, the better the arbitrage.
Okay, I have a question from Rob. What is the logistics regarding wet and dry utilities, as well as common area maintenance, HOA creation? Can anybody speak to that?
Has not really been worked out. All of these laws kind of create these multi-ownership or multi-tenant, but especially multi-ownership lots. And there really isn't a speedy way to work through kind of the normal conduization or homeowner association or joint liability and maintenance agreements or insurance or whatever. So at the implementation stage, I think the market has long recognized duplexes and is struggling big time with the newer lot splits. I do want to just come back though and bring everyone's attention. There's this great demographer, Wendell Cox, who's looked at housing prices globally for 20 years. And whenever you create what amounts to an urban limit line, such as an infill only focus on housing, 100% of the time you have fewer housing units and higher housing prices. Only 5% of California is developed according to the US Census. Most states is, 15, 30%. The idea that we are doing infill only is I think does a real, frankly, injustice to people who want a traditional home. And where we're growing is infill not, right? We're not growing in infill nearly as much as we hoped. We have thousands, tens of thousands of permitted unbuilt units because of high costs. So,
well, and I wasn't trying to say that we should only do urban infill redevelopment. Only that it would be great to have more of that somehow. And I think
all of the above.
To your point, Jennifer, all of the above, exactly. I keep reading about, I just read an article that said that Skid Row, there's an approval that is nearing for a $2 billion project on Skid Row. Now, I don't know if anybody here has ever been to Skid Row in the last year or two, but the notion that someone would put $2 billion there is so far-fetched to me. And the type of construction you'd have to do, the cost of that type of urban infill, type 5 construction or type 1, I guess I don't even know the typology, but it's funny because they keep seeing these approvals for big urban infill projects, Jennifer, but they're not going to get built because nobody wants to be in those locations because downtown LA is rough right now.
Well, and you can't, Berkeley approved a big tower and, they pro forma it at $8,800 a month in rent for a 2-bedroom. Really?
$8,800. Well, and again, I just want to do a shout out again to Jared and Sal, because these are two people on our call that are demonstrating a viable path forward. They are both creating very viable housing. It's not cheap because it's new construction, but it fits in with the California sort of model of I want to have my house, I want to have an outdoor space, a sliding door. It's good quality housing for people, and it can be pretty affordable too, right? Jared, how much are your tenants paying on one of your 750 square foot freestanding units in some of these markets? Give us a ballpark.
Like $2,400 for our small 3-bedroom, when the market rate would be between $3,200 and $3,400 if we built just a few hundred square feet bigger.
Yeah, and I also just want to say, having grown up in California too, I think we have a vision of housing, of good housing being housing where you could walk outside and not walk outside onto a little terrace. Walk outside onto the street and ride your bike or have a place to plant some flowers that's not a flower pot. And so I think that's why another reason I'm so excited and want everybody on this call to succeed in a huge way in doing this is that I think it fits with why people move to California, and why people choose to stay in California if they were raised here. They want that kind of housing. And I think that you're both doing, Jared and Sal, in your areas, and Brian, perhaps sounds like you're doing these up north too. You're creating something that's good for the state and it's creating extra housing. And Gloria, you're doing that too, because every time you split a lot, you're that's going to become more housing, right? The new lot is going to become more housing.
Well, I do think we also should all learn from the ADU example. Why did that take off? A lot of hard work, years of hard work, but we have pre-approved ADU designs. We have approval pathways that are by right. We have now products in the market. We have vendors and construction contractors. We fixed utility hookups. There were a lot of things that got done and now are now almost commoditized. We need the same thing for now, lot splits that result in multiple owners. There is an AI tool that will write condo association rules for a 4-unit, project, infill project. So all of these, I think, are major opportunities, and their entry point cost is much, much lower, especially with AI. And each of these cities, by the way, they go through it, and then their staffers rotate to the next city, and then the next city has the experience in the form of the human being. So all of this is accelerating. It is a market. It's very attractive. It's just, given the scale of our need, we need to be, I think, a little more respectful of an all of the above approach.
And we're all of the above too. My own business, selfishly, is more the urban infill, 1 to 10 unit projects. And so that's why we put this together, is to find new borrowers who are doing developments. But all of the above is what I want to see as well. I just want to shout out, we have 25 answered questions and 16 open unanswered, which is fantastic. I love this engagement. And we're not going to be able to answer all your questions today, but we are able to capture your questions and make sure that we get you in touch with somebody after the fact. But I want to use our remaining few minutes. Mohammed, please go ahead.
Yeah, if I could just interject. So I plan legislation for the next year when it comes to California YIMBY. My priority is for these law splits to become as easy as we've done for ADUs. Like, that's number one. ADUs, easiest thing legally, hardest thing finance, but subdivisions, easy to finance, not very great legally. Our other focus is everything that we could do to reduce costs on construction. That includes park fees and impact fees. That includes how we scale and do inclusionary zoning. That includes transfer taxes in Los Angeles. Our main priority is to reduce housing costs across the board, so housing construction will be easier for next year. And Jennifer, I'll have Brian give you a call and just tell you more about what we're planning for next year. So then you can be in the loop, because since joining the organization, my main concern is the rising cost of housing construction, and so we need to tackle that immediately.
On that note, that raises a really good point we haven't touched on. We keep hearing that factory-built housing or somehow modular housing is going to dramatically reduce cost, but it seems like it's always 3 years away from actually being viable. Is it still 3 years away from being viable, or is it viable now? I don't think Jared and Sal or Brian, I don't think any of you are using factory built. Is that right? Go ahead, Brian.
We actually have 8 in-state modular homes in progress right now, and we're very familiar. We have an ADU client that has full prefab ADUs under construction as well. I think the answer, Jan, is it is here, it is changing, but the context is critical, and it's not applicable for every project.
And what's been the biggest obstacle? I know that the VC-backed companies that want to come in and do 1,000 or 10,000 units, a lot of times they come to factory built as their idea, but then a lot of times they hit a wall and blow up and disappear as fast as they arrived, right? So what's been the number one obstacle to using factory built to reduce cost and reduce time? Does anybody have a point of view on that?
My point of view is it's the usual suspects we see everywhere. City implementation, city plan checkers still don't really understand factory built housing, how to review plans, what is in whose jurisdiction, whether the state of California's factory built housing approval process or theirs. Site conditions, hazard zones, fire zones,
Okay.
logistics, permitting across California.
We've got 4 minutes left, and I want to go around the horn and get final thoughts from each of you. It's going to have a little under 1 minute each, so we can end on time. But I want to thank everybody, all of you panelists, for giving your time and your knowledge and sharing what you've learned the hard way, and all of the audience for being so engaged. I'm just thrilled with that. So let's start with Jared. Parting thought for the group. Anything you want to say as a final word for today?
Yeah, I think that this is a solution that can turn the tides on affordable housing. I agree with Jennifer that we need all the solutions, but this can keep people in their neighborhoods that they grew up in. And there are very viable ways to scale this business. We're doing it right now, but we can do a lot more.
Fabulous. Gloria, you are muted. Can you give us your parting thoughts?
I just want to say thank you to all of you for doing your part in this. Really grateful to all you. And for the listeners, I want to let you guys know that we do have a free tool to check eligibility that my team has created. So if you want to see if your property is eligible for SB9, you can go to our website and we have a free tool. You can plug in your address and it'll let you know zoning, wetlands, fire, etc.
And your website is Riechers Engineering, is that right? Or tell us, what's your website?
RichersEngineering.com.
RichersEngineering.com. RIECHERS. Perfect. Thank you. Mohammed, let's hear your parting thoughts.
Yeah. Don't pursue these projects without any experts with you or someone that has done these projects before in that market. There's a lot of professional services that could help you and help you succeed. It's okay to share the wealth. We have a lot more work to do in California. We're working every year, and no one thought we could streamline CEQA 5 years ago. That miracle has happened this year, and you'll see more in the coming years. So support California IMBY and everything that we do. I'll send our website to the audience, and people could subscribe to our newsletter and find ways to get involved.
That's amazing.
Thank you for having me.
Let's make this. Thank you. Let's make this a movement, and let's keep going, because some of the hardest things have already gotten done. I mean, the hard part has been the last several years, and almost everybody on this call has personally battled to get to us to where we are. So thanks for that. Sal, your parting thoughts.
To keep it short, affordable housing incentives are here. They're not going anywhere. They're just going to keep getting better with more waivers and faster processing and permitting. It is the future of housing, in my personal opinion.
Okay, exciting. Brian?
Yeah, I think my parting thought is just to pick your battles, pick your projects wisely. Underwriting today is much more than just financial analysis. It's really considering the city you'll be working with, the partners you choose, the hazard zones, the building complexities, and all that stuff that goes into the sites. That is the most acute when it comes to SB 9, 64, 11, 23, and other residential infill opportunities. But we believe it's the future.
Thank you, Brian. And Jennifer?
Yeah, so as the lawyer, I want to suggest a word change. So we talk about these infill laws in terms of increasing density. Actually, when you look at population density, we have such smaller household sizes now than we did when these homes were built in the 40s, 50s, 60s, when families had 3 kids or more, and we had, 5, 6 people living in a big house, and certainly more than 3, even in a smaller home. There's a reason we have this template. And now we have much smaller housing size. Marin has more bedrooms per person than any other county in the United States. So we are just restoring people to neighborhoods. And the fact that they no longer are related is not, frankly, anyone else's business. We're restoring people to neighborhoods, and restoring people to neighborhoods means restoring neighborhood businesses. So I would encourage you all to rethink your focus on density. This unit type in particular, these product types in particular, which are not the behemoth apartments, which get everyone with gray hair all excited. These are just restoring people to neighborhoods, and I think that's a better framing, frankly.
Okay, very, very good. So lastly, on the topic of cost and complexity and obstacles, we're going to try to be a clearinghouse as best we can to get you pushed into the right, to the right person to answer your question. Because I do think if you want to do one project in Fresno, let's say, to give an example, if you have to hire a lawyer and an engineer and end up spending $30,000 or $40,000 just to research your project, that project isn't going to happen. So we're going to try to find ways to reduce the barriers to your taking on a project, because every person that does a project is helping to educate that city and helping to create an example for others to follow. So with that, thank you so much. You can tell I'm passionate about this. I want California to be successful, and it's been sad to see how affordability has kind of removed that hope that a lot of younger people have had about having the kind of life they want to have. But we've been able to reinvent so many times, and I think we'll be able to find a way forward here too. So thank you so much to our speakers and to our audience, and have a great rest of the day.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.